Welcome to selfdiscoverymedia.com, where the orchard of wisdom shows are at your fingertips. It ignites your soul, your heart, your spirit, your mind, and your body with illumination from people who have made the journey before you. They're here now to help you on your journey, on your path of self-discovery. We are funded by you, the audience, and the people we interview. If you wish to support us, please go to selfdiscoverymedia.com and press on our Fund Action button. Anything is appreciated. We'd like you to sit back and enjoy the shows. Here we go. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everybody. Welcome back to another edition of Building Your Business right here on selfdiscoverymedia.com. I'm your host, Sarah Troy. My wonderful guest is Phyllis, Weiss, Haserot. Oh, gosh, we've got a lot to talk about today. And it is, what does your why think? What do we mean by that? She has a fantastic site, which I absolutely love the name of, as You Can't Google It. And she's the author of You Can't Google It. I love it because we think we can Google everything and get all the answers. And she's saying, no, there's some things that you actually have to discover or learn along the way and not just Google. She brings a perspective to understand why people think and act as they do. She interprets and inspires and facilitates action into fostering meaningful, non-threatening conversations and relationships in organizations on the part of management, next generation leaders, young professionals, and multi-generational teams that are key to productivity, profitability, and sustainability. She's going to talk to us today on the focus on the concepts behind the trademarked word GENgagement and collaborationism.
That was harder.
Is a great word, just got to get around it, collaborageism, and how it involved in her work and passion for all things generational work as represented in You Can't Google It. She's been in the business a long time. She has her own podcast, Legacy Maker at Work, and inspires leaders, listeners to start early to be intentional about making significant impact in creating a work legacy that benefits the organizations that they work for, as well as their own careers. The target audience is change makers in mid-level career and professional and executives who are frustrated and eager to burst out of that very large impact and influence other people. So she is dubbed the cross-generational voice and business, uniting people, purpose, potential, profit, cross-generation, and works with organizational leaderships, multi-generational teams focused on both external and internal stakeholder relationships to solve the increasing urgent problems inherent in retaining the most desirable talent and clients. So let's talk about this wonderful GENgagement. And I've got to get back to that word again, that wonderful word of collaboration, or GENageism. Oh, no, Collaborationism. I love the words. I've got to get used to them.
I'll tell you what that means.
Yes, please do.
Okay, it's not, I thought about it. I mean, these words pop into my head literally. And I thought of collaborageism about 3 years ago. GENgagement is earlier than that, and it's been used a lot. And what I was thinking, which is not as much the obvious sounds like getting all the generations to work together, to collaborate together. Well, yes, but I had something more specific in mind. I had in mind getting all the generations or ages to work together to fight ageism, whether it was for younger people, for older people, for the people in the middle. As I'm always saying, even babies are aging every day. And so it can hit you at any time. And I think that ageism is an evil and makes no economic, social, or cultural sense. It really doesn't. And so we've got to get rid of it. And I think that the only way that will happen and get rid of the stigmas and all of that, is that you have everybody working together about it, whatever. And it's interesting that the younger people really resonate with that idea. They, for themselves, yes, definitely, they hate being told what experience do you have. Why should I listen to you?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And it, as I said, they're getting older. They're changing. I think it is really quite amusing, to me anyway, that people who are 40 years old are considered the older people. And the millennials are 40 now.
I did a wonderful show the other day on This Week as well, which is when we looked at the ages like the seasons, spring when you're born in your youth, and then summer in your youth adult, as you're coming into youth adult, the maturity in the fall, and then the winter is the wisdom. We need all 4 seasons. And when you put them together, each one of them bring an essence, an enthusiasm, a point of view, a particular skill. Now, it's all very well to have the wisdom, but if you haven't got somebody to apply the wisdom to, and if you've got somebody with enthusiasm but needs a little wisdom, right? Everybody has a place in this, and we're so used to compartmentalizing everybody. Now, at this age, you must be doing this. At this age, you've got to be doing, at that age, you're out to pasture. Instead of looking at all of those ages and amalgamating everyone together and everybody being stimulated by each other's beautiful gift and interpretation and participation, I think we would be much better off if we put life experience rather than age in the group. You have to be this age. No, we have many 20-year-olds that are much more mature than some 40-year-olds, right? So get them all together.
Right. I don't think most people believe that you have to be doing this and that, and especially we see it with the younger generations who are not in any hurry to get married, if ever, have children, all of those things. We look at the world, and what a word that you didn't mention, and it is one of the words in the book, you can't Google it, is perspective. Worldview, perspective. And the younger people really are very interested, tell me, in knowing the perspective of people who are older. They want to know, the millennials especially were this way. They want to know everything that everybody else knows. They didn't want to fail. They wanted to have all that they know, which are, different things in their education, whether it was technology or just how the world is changing, as well as everything that came before. And so sharing that is very, very useful.
Yeah. And as a True Colors coach, the 4 key personality traits, which each one is, you're going to interact from your own perspective. All right, and you're going to perceive from your own personal identity perspective. And everybody is necessary, because when everybody participates, you get a bigger picture, right? Otherwise, we're inclined to look at things from one angle only see it from one point of view. Well, that's all very well. It may be absolutely a fabulous idea, but how are you going to bring it to fruition if you don't have the other ingredients, the other perspectives on how to do it? Because that's what it's meant to be about. We're not meant to be, we can have solo ideas, we can have a leader, but we are meant to be teams, aren't we? We are meant to come and work together.
I mean, and I think that is not something that everybody holds.
No.
And we are, it's so much of what drives me with a lot of this is that there's so much divisiveness in the world, in our country. I'm sure even you're in Canada, right? Yeah. I mean, you've got some too. It's
Or
not as
anywhere in the world has it. Absolutely everywhere. Yeah.
and it gets worse. It seems to be getting worse daily.
Hmm.
And we just got to stop this.
Yes.
We're just ruining society that
Yeah.
way. And so, we see, one of the things that is part of my mission is to get um, age generations with a more prominent role in the diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging table.
Right.
I mean, we hear a lot about the various other kinds of diversity, and they're all very important, whether it's race, ethnicity, gender, LGBTQ, and A, and the rest of the letters that go on that. I mean, I think it's fine people have whatever their personal identity is, and that they define it however they want, and they're all worthy of respect.
Yes. Yeah.
Until they're not. So the more inclusion of all those things and making people feel that they belong, not that, you have to agree 100%.
Right. That's where conversation comes in. That's where, a healthy debate comes in, brainstorming.
Yes. And I'm dismayed that we have less and less of that.
The sad thing of what we're seeing here today, and it seems to be across the board, when COVID first came out, that first 3 months, everybody was isolated and everybody kind of had a good look at their lives. Am I spending more time with myself, with my family? Do I really love my job? What is life about? And people were missing people. They were missing community, right? And they were missing that good interaction. Not a shallow interaction that we seem to be going down before. And it was really a wonderful gift for people to kind of have that pause in their lives and reflect. And so much pivoting and so much redirection came out from it. And people who are now kind of living more fruitful lives because they're being truer to who they are. But then along came the other side of them against us. Division, division, division. And we seem to have this innate, I'm not going to call it nature, because I think it's a pattern. It's a pattern that's been instilled in us, is that the moment people come together in harmony, there is some sort of sabotage that we want to do in dividing them. And I think it's a pattern that's innate in us that we need to recognize and we need to stop, because the youth aren't more superior than our elders. Nobody is more superior, right? And we're all in this together. Just some may be wiser and some may be more experienced. And right, and that's what you revere.
This started a long time ago. It wasn't COVID that did it. COVID did isolate people from being in person with other people, which I so sorely miss, being able to do more of that. I mean, it's very important to me, and I think there's a lot more energy that way created.
We're designed to be that way, right? To share our energies.
I mean, some people like it better than others, and you understand that. Introverts, extroverts, ambiverts, all of those things. But it was this building of divisiveness has started a long time.
Oh yeah, it just escalated.
It was what I'm hoping is that the good things that you started to mention there, that people reflecting, and that's so important. And I think that, I blame some of that on employers, because they don't give, especially in demanding industries and things got to be more and more demanding. They don't really allocate or even encourage people to be reflecting.
No.
And to talking and to get to know other people that they, as people,
Right. Yes, as
that
human beings. Yes.
have, how can we, work together? Oh, those things are important, but it makes it much easier to collaborate and accomplish things and be productive if you have a better sense of the people that you're with.
And treat them as their own identity, as human beings that are
Right.
having their own struggles in life. I don't know if you remember the movie 9 to 5, Dolly Parton and Jane Fonda, and how they completely changed the industry because they took care of the people who needed daycare. They took care of the people that needed to leave by 3 to pick up their kids. And everybody was so much more productive because they were happier, because they felt the company was looking after them just as much as they wanted to look after the company. And I think when you place value on the people, people, planet before profit, you're going to get more productivity.
Oh, yeah. And I think we're seeing some of that. And I think there are employers who are struggling with how to do it.
Yes.
Including how do you have people working remotely or hybrid and others in the office, or, that kind of thing. I mean, there's a lot of turmoil and searching for what are the answers. And there isn't one answer.
No.
It's going to be different for different people in different places.
And this is where you have to actually have the conversation with everybody in your company, right?
Yes.
There has to be the dialogue. You know what? Don't impose upon people, it's this or you're out. Right? Because they'll probably go out, or they'll be utterly miserable if they're having to stay there just because it's a paycheck. And that doesn't mean they're going to be producing very well, whatever they're doing. And I think if the CEOs kind of climbed down from their ivory tower and actually started talking from the janitor up, what is needed? What would you like to see in place? And look at the common denominator and look at how you can actually, manifest it in a way that everybody's getting a little something, that they know that you are at least listening to them, paying attention. As I said, that kind of loyalty, people are going to want to stay in that kind of job.
Right. And they want a voice.
Yes, they want a voice.
And we're especially seeing that from the younger generations.
Yeah.
But I think, everyone, they're demanding it.
Yeah.
They're not as quiet as the Gen Xers. The boomers weren't very quiet, but I'm concerned about the Gen Xers, and that was part of my real target for the legacy makers at work, for the podcast and for the
Give the age group of the Gen Xers so people know.
The Gen Xers are over 40 to about, used to say 55, so it's probably 57 by now. Everybody. So it's that, and they are hardworking. I mean, the funny thing is that they were called slackers when they first came into the workplace. And I think that one of the reasons is not that they were slackers, but they came into the workplace in a bad recession, not as bad as 2008, but a bad recession. And they were not getting the jobs that they would have gotten. They were overqualified for them if they got work at all. And it took a while to catch up. And also there were other things. There was more divorce then. There were, a whole number of things. So they look at it differently, and they're also a smaller generation. So they are squeezed in between the boomers and the millennials, which is all very large, and Gen Z is also large. So,
Yeah, we did a show the other day on the boomers, and don't put them out to pasture, because the boomers still have a lot to give. I'm certainly a boomer. And we have still so many more of us. And a lot of the boomers have just simply not gone quietly into night and retired. They've started second careers, or started new businesses. And as you said, that, yeah, the Gen X ones have kind of got lost in between, because then you've got the millennials that, and the millennials are quite divided. You've got some that just don't want to know anything, and you've got the younger generation from that really are just glued to their phones all the time, or apparatuses. They're kind of losing the art of reading and conversation and everything else.
I disagree about that a
Oh,
little.
there's a total divide on it, but there is most certainly that generation that is just lost in emoji talk. And it's become quite an epidemic.
They also like being in person with people.
Yes, but on what level? Because a lot of those people have been caught up in the political correctness, and certain books they're not allowed to read, certain topics are not allowed to be taught. I had last week 2 teachers on complaining about books that have been pulled from the shelf and all of that. So
the younger part of them, but the ones who are in their 20s now, were not exposed to that.
Yeah, the 20s and the 30s, because I have millennials in the 30s, and it's they didn't want to buy into the rhetoric of the political and all of this and that. I felt certainly the late 20s and 30s and going into the 40s age group, the ones like, I don't want to do what my parents did, but I'm in discovery of what I do want to do and what really is important. And I think they've become more kind of the environmentalists, maybe more of the entrepreneurs, and more of the people that just don't want to go by the status quo. And so they've kind of changed the way other practices have happened in the Gen X and in the boomer generation, because they're just not going to comply to the same rules.
To some degree, that's true. I think, first of all, these are broad generalizations, and I always say
there's
that
trillions of people out there of all very ages. Yeah, it's just talking about the lumps of them.
Besides, there are generational attributes that are typical of a lot of the people in those particular age cohorts, but they're also, everything is not generational, so it may depend on geographically where they're born and brought up. Do they come from a conservative or a more liberal, progressive family?
What politically was going on at that time? I mean, all the influences. But
those are typical influences, but I'm just saying on an individual basis. And even some things like what your position is in a hierarchy. Because let's say you're best friends with somebody, or at least close friend, that you've been working with, and that person gets promoted to be your boss. You're going to have a different view of things, and you're going to feel a different level of responsibility, perhaps. So there are just so many things besides personal behavioral styles and all of that we have to consider, and not sort of paint everybody with the same brush.
No, there is, it's not, I'm not painting everybody with the same brush, but I am talking about the various sections of what is happening that is pretty evident. And it is up to us as individuals, to take ownership of our own choices in life, and to stand up and be seen and be heard. If you feel you're not seen and heard, then you need to find a way to be seen and heard peacefully. And
not out on the streets.
Right, no pitchforks, thanks. And I think that's where we are at in society right now, is that we're realizing we do need to speak up. And of course, you do have the people then take it to the other extreme in their protest. But it is this isn't working. This is why I'm saying in a company, everybody needs to put their input in. Doesn't matter what your age is. For the
Right.
company's survival, everybody needs to put in how they feel, what they see. Let's face it, when you walk into a building, if it's not clean, do you want to do business with those people? Because you immediately have got, oh, it's tardy, dirty, right? The janitor has set the stage for you. Are you acknowledging the janitor? The janitor sees and hears everything, right? Why aren't you talking to your janitor? And if you've got harmony within any company where everybody feels they have that voice, you are certainly going to see a great deal more pride, more loyalty, and one hell of a lot more productivity because of it.
Yes. And I think, again, that is one of the good things that's come out of this pandemic. We appreciate people who a lot of people would look down on.
Yes.
Yeah, I
Our
mean,
truck drivers, and
everyone.
storekeepers, and oh gosh, what would we have done without them?
Yeah. And I mean, what we were doing, in New York, I don't know how it was in Canada. I'm sure you were appreciating them and all.
Yep, 7 o'clock every night, pots and pans, yes.
Exactly. And, I mean, that was just something that we all looked forward to. Yeah. So, that kind of I hope it sticks,
Yeah.
calm down. Are people going to go back to not really thinking about it? I hope not. I hope that, these light bulbs went off and
stay on.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Well, what we do have again that, as I say, we've had the physical pandemic. I think we're going for an emotional pandemic now, where a lot of people are just so stressed, and a lot of people who have struggled to keep their businesses alive. And, are they open? Are they closed? Are they open? Are they closed? Especially in the hospitality industry. And then you've got, on top of that, the financial strain of them just trying to stay open or trying to keep their heads above water, navigating all the do's and don'ts. And here in BC, we had massive flooding that literally washed away our main artery in November. And that meant goods couldn't get to us and the shelves were becoming empty. And there's no point in being angry because nobody wants that. Nobody benefits from that. It's an act of nature. And we've still got people, though, that will get angry over something because they don't know how to cope. Right. And I think that's where we're at right now, is that I know everybody's feeling rather angst or frustrated and not navigating. Where are we now? Where can we go next? And I think that's even more the need for people to have a conversation.
Yes, yes. And another word that had come up in our conversation so far is vulnerability.
Oh, yeah.
And, you would talk about people speaking up, but they have to be open to expose them, their emotions and that kind of thing, much more than, especially at work, people were doing. It was got to, keep up a good face and,
I don't want to rock the boat.
That's that, but not only rocking the boat, but just even admitting when, failure or when you feel, that you don't know something.
Right.
And I mean, it used to be, especially with professionals, and I do a column for Thomson Reuters now. And the one that we're going to run, it won't be till March, but I've been preparing for this one, is on new definitions of competence. And so there, things like that, what we really want to see from people. And it used to be, as I said, especially with professionals, that they thought if a client or even their colleagues ask them something, they can't admit that they don't know.
Right. Yeah.
And it's beginning to be recognized that people really appreciate, letting down the curtain and saying, this is how I feel, or this is what I don't know. You're asking me, I'm going to find out and get back to you.
Exactly.
There's nothing wrong with it.
Nothing wrong with that.
People actually like it and like you better.
Yeah.
Because
you're not a know-it-all.
yeah, exactly. Or that you admit that you're not perfect. And they know that they're not perfect. So, they feel that puts you on a similar level.
Right.
So, yeah, I think that is very important. Vulnerability is another one.
Well, it's a facade that people were living behind. I've got to know it all. If I don't, people are going to think less of me, or the boss is going to think I don't know what I'm doing. But how can you go around knowing everything for every scenario? And especially in these times.
It
And,
changes every day.
it changes from day to day. And it's, what? I haven't come across this before. That's a good point. I'm going to ask my team, and I'm going to get back to you with an answer. And then people know they've now got a team working on it, not just somebody's, opinion of it, or somebody trying to paint it over, with what they think it should be and what it not isn't really. That kind of vulnerability, I think that all of us need to have. And some companies like to do the silent box, no name, just put in your suggestions, right? But we never know who's reading those suggestions or throwing them out. And some places will literally do a circle, everybody around the circle. One person speaks, the other person feels more confident to speak, and then another person. It's not a bitch fest. It's just that how you feel. I feel when I'm asked to do this and I can't do it, I feel uncomfortable saying I can't do it. Right. Because I feel my job is threatened. And if everybody's in the circle sharing that vulnerability, it becomes a spotlight on really what the problem is, but it's empowering that person that it's okay to be vulnerable.
That's right. And another thing that I've been focusing a lot recently, and will be more so, is psychological safety, because that is what is behind a lot of this in cultures, and especially work cultures. People feel that they may be under threat to be fired, or people will look at them. And what you need to do to have really good, productive, creative discussions is to make people feel comfortable and say, we want everyone to speak up. Don't sit there and be quiet.
Right.
That's holding back from what it is we can accomplish here. But the psychological safety really brings on more engagement. And it's something that most places most cultures have to work on now, because it's not all that prevalent.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And we don't know what people are going through on the home front. Has somebody been sick? Is somebody sick? Are they having problems with childcare? Is there an issue with a parent? I mean, life isn't just a smooth plate, it's up and down all the time. And now they're meant to just forget about it and come to work and concentrate on their work, and that is just sometimes simply not feasible. And if you can hear people out and saying, look, this is what I'm going through right now, and I'm going to do my very best here, but please understand that at the present moment I could do with some support.
And another thing along those lines is microaggressions. And people who, most of the time, I think, when they say things that really rub somebody the wrong way, whatever difference it is they have, most people probably do it unintentionally.
Because they're frustrated, right?
Well, no, they don't really realize. I mean, we don't have a list we can whip out and say, oh, I shouldn't say this, I shouldn't do that.
Right.
And again, that changes all the time because
Yes.
people have become more sensitive to what personal identities are.
Yes.
And that's not a bad thing. It just, makes things more difficult.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
we have to deal with it.
And the thing is, don't turn around and persecute somebody for saying the wrong thing. Just maybe point out, I think there's a better word you could use for that. Or perhaps if you understand that that is a little offensive, let the person know, right?
Speak up. And that's, going back to psychological safety, that people know that it's going to be respected for them to call out respectfully.
Yes. Yes.
Something that bothers them for some reason.
No persecution on either side, no shame or blame.
Right.
Just awareness.
And you won't do it to somebody else.
Right.
Because, it's liable. And then there'll be some people who will go politically correct and this is all nonsense.
And we really are treading on those waters right now. As I was saying with the teacher I interviewed last week, he was saying that so many books have been pulled because they have certain words in them. And it's like, I don't understand that. It's better to have people read the books.
Of course.
And then point out why the word is derogatory, why the word needs to not be in any further books. But it's like brushing everything under the rug and you can't do this and you can't do that. We're not educating people the do's and the don'ts. We're just telling them the do's, right? And how are people meant to learn if we're not willing to talk about it? And that's, we have many mixed races in the workforce right now, and many people have been under attack one level. Here, of course, in Canada, as many Asian people are being attacked physically in every other way because of the virus, right? Because somebody said it's all China's fault. And there was a 92-year-old with dementia thrown out of a building and just thrown over. Another guy just literally pushed, landing on his face. And it's not acceptable at all. But it's also ignorant. And, we need to, when we see something like that, even in the workforce, we need to say, okay, halt. This needs to be addressed, because otherwise resentment calls and there's a ricochet that goes on. And then it ends up being an eruption. And people need to know that they're safe to actually call someone out on, or if they need help, to go to their boss and say, this is not behavior, I need your backup on this, right? Everybody's in it together. And togetherness is where they need to be.
It should be.
As it should be. But don't you think that that is changing now very much in the workforce? And that the pandemic definitely has been one to do it. As you say, some people have chosen to work virtually and some go back. Some people are doing 2 days, at work and 3 days at home. And that it's changing the whole dynamics of it completely.
Yes, definitely. It's tough to deal with, and it's going to be a lot of navigating and trying to figure it out. I keep calling it that we're in a big experiment right now, because I think that a lot of people will make choices about where they want to work and how they want to work. And after trying out for a while, and this is, management as well as everybody else, that they're going to decide what they really want is 180 degrees from that. I mean, you just can't know, because all of this is different than it ever was.
I mean, there was one guy I remember being interviewed on the news, and he had like 10,000 square feet office space. And he's saying that, everybody was working virtually. And he said, I'm going to get rid of at least half of my office space, because I know even when we come back, there's going to be some people that prefer to still work virtually, and their jobs are fine to work virtually. Come in for a meeting, come in for, something, but they don't need to actually be there. And he said, then that's 5,000 square feet of overhead I'm not carrying anymore.
Exactly. I think even before the pandemic and all these changes were going on, that the reason that employers would give people flexibility to work home for some of the time was so that they could reduce their real estate
Yes.
costs. And what's wrong with that?
And they're pretty significant, those costs.
Yeah,
They really are.
Yeah.
So you can't blame them unless you're in retail, where you need it. And of course, what we see so much today too is the shared office space where people book a meeting room or book something or have I don't know what you call them, receptionists or something that are there that will direct them to wherever they are. But we are in kind of an experiment right now, aren't we, of kind of finding what works, where do we land, what is the future view looking like? And we're not going to know until we kind of shift a few pieces around to see what fits. And that's going to be different from one company to the other.
Right. And human nature doesn't like uncertainty. So this is very difficult. And that's one of the reasons for so much anxiety.
Yes. And as you said, you work with the Gen Xs that are kind of lost in between there. But again, it's if we can get people to listen to one another, if we can get people to feel safe enough to talk, and that there is no wrong opinion. It's just where did that come from and how can we address it? And don't bring your angst to the table, right? It's because that's not going to resolve anything, but you can bring to the table something that may disturb you or you feel uncomfortable with, or that you wish to see something different over. Change can't happen just by a magic wand and now it's all okay. Right? It's a total restructuring and everybody needs to be a part of it.
Yeah.
And that means listening, that means being vulnerable, that means having other perspectives, that means listening to generation that maybe do not speak up as loud as others, or have been, stuck in one way for all of their career life and that feel vulnerable in the changes that are happening now.
Yeah. And again, that's so much also on an individual basis. So that's, if an age cohort or any cohort you want to look at was really uniform in the way they want things or the way they do things or their capabilities or anything like that, boy, it would be easier. But it's certainly not. And it would not be nearly as interesting.
No, kind of reminds me of that movie. I think it's called Gattaca, where everything was regimented and everybody's desk had to be the same. You couldn't position something in a different position. Everything was so utterly regimented. So there was literally only one perspective. That was the only way you're going to do it. And it was totally uniform and no individualism whatsoever, which is, we know, is going to burst from its seams. It's going to be rebellious because we can't do that. We can't demand people only do it from one perspective. We have to embrace all the points of view, because when we do, that's when we really are serving it. Because you've got to remember your customers are different perspectives from you too.
Yeah, that's called autocracy, what you were describing, which is pretty scary, and we're seeing too much of that. So it can actually be imposed, but we certainly don't want it.
Do you feel that more the work people today, that the more people try and impose that, the more people stand up and say, not for me, I'm going somewhere else?
Yeah, I mean, but everybody doesn't have the means to go somewhere else, or it turn out. I mean, there are compromises, there are, what you have to give up to be able to have something else. And as I said, just really hard to work it out.
Yeah.
We'll have to. That's what humanity is about. Maybe for animals, it's more straightforward, or at least for some of them.
Mm-hmm.
With
Yeah.
our brains,
We like to complex things, don't we?
it's more complicated.
Yeah. Yeah, and we do like to make things more complicated. How did you come up with the title, You Can't Google It? Because it's a brilliant title.
Oh, thank you. I came up with that, and I used it before that book. I can tell you what that means. I don't know how I came up with it. It popped into my head like all these
Yes.
other. So what it means is that you can't learn, acquire, or practice the things that make you most successful by just going out on the internet and doing a search, but rather that you need to develop relationships and conversations that are going to help you do that and get to learn what you need to learn and look at things from different viewpoints. So it's not like you can put a word in, in Google and come up with the answer. I mean, you can for more factual data kinds of things. I mean, that's amazing.
Yes.
I mean, even 20 years ago, we couldn't even dream of any of this to the extent. And it'll be more so in metaverse, and so will be, inside and outside. But that was the idea. And actually, so the book was structured around 10 what I call essential skills and traits that you cannot learn, acquire, practice by just doing a search. And it's looked at from the lenses of the 5 different generations, examples and all of that. But I've used that. Before I used it for a book title, I did 1 or 2 videos talking about it. Yeah, people,
It's a good title. It certainly captures people. And it reminds me of, I don't know if it was an Outer Limits or a Twilight Zone, one or the other. And it was, everybody was living in a world where kind of they just had a chip in their head and they would ask the chip, what they wanted to know. And so they never had to retain information, right? Because the computer always answered for them. There was one guy where the chip didn't work in his head and he read. And he taught himself to write and everything else. And he was considered the moron until one day the computer went down because nobody was maintaining it and none of the chips worked anymore. And he became the teacher, right? So it is very true. We could, what date was such and such? Google it. Fantastic. But it's not the be all and the end all of the information. We need to know the process. We need to know who does it affect. We need to know how we can participate with it. Google is great for those little snippets of information, but there is no quick downloadable app that is going to do things for us. We still have to participate. And that I think is something that some people are beginning to forget, that interaction, participation, relationships, because your relationships in business are just as important as they are in your own personal life. And that's how you're going to get ahead, right? You can't abstain from it. You're required to participate.
Yes.
But a good reminder, I think, for people, that title alone is You Can't Google it. It certainly can give you some answers, but you still got to walk the walk.
Yeah. What I also like about the title is that when people hear it, they laugh or smile or chuckle
Yes,
or something
yes.
like that. It gets a reaction, which I consider a positive
Oh,
reaction.
no, it definitely makes you stop, and then you can't Google it, and it's like, and people go, why not? What do you mean I can't Google it? But it certainly opens up the conversation for sure. Yeah, which is what you want, because now, of course, your book now has those steps of why you can't Google it and why you need to go through the processes in life in order to achieve whatever it is you want to achieve.
Yeah, yeah. So if it helps people to have conversations, and that is really, I think, a great gift. I mean, I'm glad that I can contribute that if it does. And also, the subtitle is the compelling case for cross-generational conversation at work. And so it was my first book on generations. I've written 4 books, and 2 of them are on generations, the first 2 on business development and marketing for professional services, which is what my career was centered on before it was evolving. I started as an urban planner. And
well, that's what gives you the advantage, though, because you're a planner.
Yes. Oh, I am a planner. No. Yeah, I mean, that I have a master's in urban planning, and I felt, and I was doing well, I felt that I was more business oriented than a lot of the people in the field, and got very interested in, became a trailblazer in marketing and business development for professional firms. And that evolved also to organizational effectiveness, because I realized that organizations of all kinds were not more effective than they are because of how people interacted or didn't with each other, often didn't. And so there was all of that, and dispute resolution, conflict resolution I was doing. And then realizing that the younger people in the firms that I was working with were not getting the attention that they needed because the senior people were too busy.
Right, yes.
So I convinced management to let me do next generation programs for the younger people, and served as an intermediary between management and everyone else, and explaining what was going on, and getting some to get permission to start new practice areas that they wanted to do. And so one thing led to another.
Yeah.
I just found people bring all their baggage. So I just got fascinated by all things generational. And that since 2005 is my big focus, except part of it, a large part of it, is external, attracting and retaining clients of different genders. It's just not, I haven't given that up. It just, I keep trying to rein myself in and narrowly focus. And it just seems like generational things are linked to everything.
They are.
People will say to me, you have such an interesting little niche. And I go, little?
Yeah. Yes. From birth too.
I find it fascinating. And as much as I've liked everything that I've done all along in my work life, and like people that I worked with, it was liking very much. I never put the word passion to it until really, jumping in with the generational things. I really am.
Well, that became your platform, right? I mean, obviously you're planning. There's certain people that can see patterns. And if you're a planner, you can see order, you can see patterns. All right, so it doesn't matter where you go, it's always making sense of the patterns, so there is a bigger picture to be seen, right? So that's the foundation of who you are. And then obviously the purpose is the generations of bridging the gap, because as you said, the elders in the company, they feel they can sit back and leave it up to the young people and they go golfing. And it's like, no, because there's a disconnect. It's like you see people taking over a restaurant from a restaurant that's been there for a very long time, and they're taking over the same name, but they come in and they completely revamp it and they toss out all the recipes and go entirely for their own. And it's like, but you've just lost the essence of why people are coming there. You have to incorporate some new dishes of your generation with the older dishes and merge the two together in order to keep the older clientele and invite a new clientele. It's not throwing everything out with the bathwater or one is better than the other. It's that they all serve their own purpose. And there has to be that melding there because as an urban planner, there has to be some sense made out of the pattern. You can't have suddenly something over there and it's disconnected because something's over here and there's nothing in between. No road bridging the gap. So, yeah.
Yeah, the purpose I see is making a significant impact, inspiring people to figure out, and that's where we come to the legacy makers at work. Yeah. How do you want to be remembered? And start early, like in your 40s. Don't wait, lose all that time if you wait toward, the end of the spectrum of your career or near that.
Yeah.
And intentionally, what do you want to accomplish? And how can you, impact other people?
Yes.
In a good way.
Yes.
You can impact, you can be remembered in a bad way too.
Right. We don't want that. That's not the kind of legacy you want to go down with.
Want to be in control. So it's not legacy in terms of money and philanthropy. It could be, that could be part of it. But it's really how you can impact other people to accomplish something good that you would like to see happen.
Yeah. I say inspiration begets invitation. And when you inspire people by who you are, and what you're doing, it becomes an invitation for them to look in to what they can do, or how they can do it, or who they can do it with, right? Because a legacy is somebody that has inspired. Whatever that legacy is, they've inspired people. They've inspired people by their very journey of getting there, with the wisdom that they've left behind, with the skills, the tools, or the apparatus they've left behind. But it is that inspiration, and it's be the inspiration that you wish to share with others.
Yes, yes. Even if you're not thinking of yourself as being particularly inspiring. I mean, I always find it surprising a little bit when people tell me that I've inspired them. And these are, people who've really accomplished a lot independent of me before. It's certainly a good feeling, but I didn't intend.
Right. But a true inspirer doesn't. You're just following your passion, your purpose, and that's the point, isn't it? When you step into purpose, it becomes your passion, which becomes an inspiration.
You see something that needs to be done.
Yes, yes. And if you're passionate about it, that's what people pick up, right? And when it's got a purpose, a meaningful purpose that really does serve, because we're all here to serve. One way or the other, we're here to be of service with one another. That's how it works. And when we can step into that service with a passion and a purpose that knowingly helps other people, you may go through many people that never acknowledge it, or it's quietly being acknowledged, and then other people where it's like, oh my God, thank you very much. And those thank yous are very, very nice, but it's not the reason for doing things. And most people that inspire us today never realized they were inspiring us. You know, that's the legacy. It builds long after they've gone.
Yeah. Well, they can realize it earlier on. That's why I say, start in your 40s.
Yeah.
It's not just
I would
what
say 30s. I would say
and
I've got kids in their 30s that are doing,
it could be any
Mm.
any age.
Age. Yeah.
The thing is that, the first year that you step into the workplace or something,
Mhm.
you don't have much experience normally. I mean, it
Mhm.
depends what went on in your life before, but a lot of things. So it's just building up a certain amount of experience and knowledge and starting on your wisdom.
Mhm.
That's why I don't say, but we have, I mean, we've interviewed people who were in their 20s and 30s.
Mhm. Mhm.
Yeah.
There's
Or,
some way ahead of the game. Yeah.
and it's never too late.
No.
So I'm
No.
not saying, it's too late at 60 or something like
Right.
that, or even 80,
Oh no,
it's,
I've had
it's,
a 89-year-old. At 89, she started a TV station. The last time I interviewed her, I think she was 1991, and she's still going strong. And the youngest person I've interviewed was 10, who'd written a book, 365 Days of Gratitude with a Positive Attitude. Right. So,
wonderful.
there are those people that, are just, there is no ageism in it all. It's about enthusiasm. Right. So, but I hear what you're saying about, yeah, I mean, for me, this started at 57. So I'm coming into my 10th year now, and I really found my calling. Everything that I had done led me to this point, right? So it is never too late. But if you can start it earlier, late 30s, 40s, it just means that there is more energy, there's more everything else behind it. And it just means that you've got longer time to build up that legacy where you're still around to enjoy it. Right? Yeah.
Or
And
you can still see into the future,
yes,
and you can see that there's more to do. It's
yes.
not like you're finished.
Hmm. I've only got
You
a certain shelf span of this. Yeah, no, I've got longer time in order to achieve. Yeah, definitely. Quickly tell us about the book, Embrace GENgagement. GENgagement.
Engagement, yeah,
GENgagement.
which is spelled for everybody who isn't seeing that. Capital GEN, engagement in lowercase. That I came up with several years before Collaborageism. I have a few others too. But so that book, I was asked by the American Bar Association to write a book on generations.
Mm-hmm.
And that was the result. And this is an interesting thing. I was not looking to write another book. I should have been promoting, you can't Google it, all of that. But they waited for a year until I finally agreed to do it. And I said, here's the format. And my second book was in this format, which is essentially just bullet points. I call them checklists,
Mm-hmm.
a paragraph or two, and describing what it is, and then just bullet points. So you can just dive in for the action steps
Mm-hmm.
for what you want to do. And I had worked with a lot of law firms that, I helped to, as I said, trailblaze the professional service firms in their marketing business development. So the first two were on that topic. But anyway, I just love that format.
Mm-hmm.
And I had come across it or just thought of it when I wrote the Marketer's Handbook, a Titian Checklist, because I had, I'm a consultant, facilitator, speaker, writer, all of those things. And so I was doing programs, and I'd have handouts, and I'd have,
Mm-hmm.
things that would help with that. And I thought, well, this is good stuff. it should go further than just the clients that
Yeah.
I was working with. And so I put it into a book and the publisher and all of that. And I said, that's what I want to do for Embrace GENgagement. And it goes into every every possible link to what the legal profession or lawyers were doing in their work life. So there are a lot of those so-called checklists.
Do they fit other professions as well?
Oh yeah, especially, I mean, I guess the accountants are the closest. And it isn't all specific, but I had to write it for that audience.
Right.
It was the ABA who asked me to do it. But yes, it definitely goes beyond that, probably even beyond professionals.
But the thing is that writing it in that way, especially lawyers or accountants or anybody who already has mountains of books they have to go through, having something that becomes a checklist is just easier to retain, right? It even maybe refers to some sort of book or chapter they read somewhere else, and it's easier to retain in that way. And I think it just stays with them more because it is the checklist. It is, do I have this? Do I know this? Am I doing that? And it just, I think, becomes, again, going back to your planning, a plan, a pattern that is easier to follow in their careers.
And the idea is to get people to take action. So they don't have to go wading through pages with prose to do that.
Right.
And it used to be that publishers liked big books because they figured they could charge more if it weighed more.
Not with the postal nowadays, no.
Would say when you were in school and you had to write a paper or something, and the heavier it was, the larger it was, the better the professor might think there was more in there.
Yes, those times have changed, haven't they?
Yes, well, I think that was a good change.
Yes, to the point, please. Yes. Yeah.
When we think about how little, actually everybody has a lot less patience.
Yeah. Well, there's more loaded on us today.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot more loaded on us today than there used to be. And so, where you could compartmentalize your work life, your play life, your love life, your everything, now everything seems to bleed into each other. And I think the less we load on people and the easier we can make their system, their patterning, the easier it is for them to navigate through whatever they need to do in life. So it's better that we make it simpler.
Yes. Simpler the better.
Yeah. Because if it's simpler, it's going to be used over and over and over again. It's going to be retained. Right. It becomes that pattern that it just becomes totally integrated in them, which is what people need. They need to have that kind of quick reference that then triggers, right? So they just don't have the time, as you said, to read the big things or to go and research the big stuff. So the checklist, I think, is a really good point. We all need it, not just in, accounting and lawyering. I think actually in any form of business, I think a checklist is very important. Even in my simple little business, you've got to have a pattern of how you do things. Otherwise you get thrown out of pattern and things get backed up or you do things wrong.
You definitely have to. Organizing and knowing how to do that.
Yeah. So obviously, I always believe that wherever people start, is maybe not where they're meant to stay, but it always becomes the wonderful foundation that kind of they apply to whatever else they've done, which you're definitely case in point of that, of bringing that planning skill, being able to see the pattern, see the bigger picture, how to connect things. All of that has helped you in all the work that you do now. And now you're connecting those generations and understanding how important it is in those generations to connect and to speak and to hear one another. I mean, you imagine if, you know, the elder in the company is not listening to the younger, and the younger's got this brilliant idea that can take the company to the next stage in its evolution. And if we're not listening, we're going to miss out on that. And we don't want to wait for that person to climb the ladder to get to the elder to implement it. You know, it's speak to one another, please.
Yeah. Well, just be open to listening.
Yes.
And listening is such a really, really important skill.
Yeah. Yeah. And don't make it feel that it doesn't matter that, you know, what size of the information, whether it's big or small, doesn't matter. It doesn't even matter if it's a silly idea. Look at how many things have come from what people perceive to be a silly idea. It's an idea, and how do you know where else to take it until somebody else jumps on it and says, oh, we could do this, we could do that. That's what that collaboration is all about.
That's right. And brainstorming,
yes,
with that, you know, not to discard something. You know, when you brainstorm with the group, you just have to discard a lot. But the idea is just to come out with the ideas.
Yes.
Put them down on a piece of paper or a flip chart or whatever you want to use, and then go through. Evaluation comes later.
Yes. Well, then you start to see the pattern, right? So this is your collaborageism of bringing all the ages together and all the enthusiasm. And as it's all out there, ideas being thrown, and they land. And then you start to see that beautiful puzzle come together. And if we don't have that brainstorming, and if you don't have it with all ages, again, it becomes very one-sided or very stale. And it's, look at the beautiful creativity that can come out of that. But that only comes when everybody feels equal enough to participate, right? That their idea is valid, or they're welcome to the table, no matter their age or position. So, you know, when you talk about, you know, the generational thing, you know, it is inclined that when people get to a certain age and a certain position, you know, the hierarchy and everybody else is below them. And I think a company that looks at, I may be the boss and I take the burden because they've got the burden that they carry, but I'm only as good as the people around me, not below me.
Around you, yes. I mean, and that's why you need people around you.
Yes. Yes.
And to appreciate them.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. So how do people get your book if they're, you know, both of the books? Because I think both of them would be very advantageous for no matter what you're in. How do people get your books? What are you doing now? And how do people get hold of you?
All right, we'll start. The books, you can't Google it, is on Amazon and all kinds of other places. So you can just find that there. The Embrace GENgagement, the American Bar Association likes to keep things close to the vest for a while. So I'm not sure, you can find it by going to the American Bar Association bookstore or their website and put my name in or the name of the book. It is going out beyond that, but I'm not sure exactly when.
Right. So, yes, I've just looked at it here. It's on the ABA, so the AmericanBar.org, and then products book, you can put the name in and it is there.
Yeah, or you can put my name in it.
Right. Great. Yeah.
There are other things that I've done for them, but not a whole book. So that's the books. And you want
your websites?
my websites. I have the first one, the name of my company, which I haven't mentioned, is Practice Development Council, and that's spelled COUNSEL, as in advisor.
And that's pdcouncil.com.
That is. Now, that is a huge, I mean, it must have 500 pages, that website. It started in 1999. It's been redone a couple of times. But the newer one that focuses, although there are generational things on there, I started about in the book, probably in 2018. A website called YouCan'tGoogleIt.com, which also can be gotten to by crossgenerationalconversation.com, but you can remember YouCan'tGoogleIt.com. And so that tells a lot about what I'm doing. I have a monthly newsletter, which comes out at the end of the month. So one just came out. If you would like to be on my mailing list for that, you can sign up on the You Can't Google It website, probably on both of them, or come directly to me. I would love to add you. My monthly newsletter. I have a few things I want to offer.
I would just hang on before that. I just want to mention youcan'tgoogleit.com/podcasts is where they're going to find your podcasts as well.
No.
Oh no, that's what I've got right here.
Maybe there, but we also have a site, or my podcast is on, Apple, iTunes, Spotify, all those.
But they can also find the titles right here on your site.
Okay. Yes. And the important thing also to know, to get to me directly, is my email address, which is P as in Peter, W as in Wendy. Haserot is HAS as in Sam, EROT.com. And so there's one thing that at least one thing that I want to offer you now is not on the site yet, although it's been done. I drafted a manifesto for Collaborageism, which has 10 principles there, what benefit it is to each generation, and it's 5 pages long, and we have to pretty it up. But so it's not up there yet, but it should be, any day now, because the words are there. But if you would like to have it, send me an email and I will send you a copy. You will be one of the first to see it. So if you want to see the manifesto, I feel very strongly that the idea behind collaborationism and getting all the generations together is very important to get out.
Yeah,
so,
I completely agree there. We've got to bridge the gap. We've got to make it all inclusive. Everybody has the role to play. Everybody has the participation and the wonderful skill to share. And, just having everybody under one umbrella instead of many umbrellas is much, much better. I just want to give your email again, pwhaserot@pdcouncil.com. Is that right?
Correct.
Okay.
I'm sorry, I said the wrong thing. And also we're starting, my podcast host and I are starting masterminds, also known as Legacy Makers at Work, which is actually the masterminds were supposed to come first. And the podcast was going to be to promote that and help that along. But as you know very well, Sarah, how much goes into that and putting a podcast together to begin with.
Yes.
What got launched and it just took so much time and effort that the masterminds are coming. I mean, we know what we're doing. So if you're interested in that, in the masterminds, or to help identify and plan and have support from others to get your legacy making journey, accelerate it, figure out what it is you want to do. And I like the idea of the mastermind group, because you get support, and other people will spark ideas just
Yes.
from the discussions. So
Yeah.
I've run masterminds before, and I really think that they're a great thing to do.
A great source of wonderful wisdom. So it's listen with pen in hand, and take note, and then apply. It's not just to listen to and ignore, it's to listen to and apply. But we learn best from the teachers that have gone before us. Because that wisdom, it's not only just been their experience, it's their skills, it's everything that they've done to reach that. And it's like, no, you don't have to paint, by numbers, but it is taking their skills and taking that wisdom and applying it to your own particular area of life, and then seeing how it works for you. But we do learn from listening to other people, and I do encourage people to do that.
Yeah, the masterminds we wanted to do as much as possible in person, only, more locally, or I would travel. But of course, with the pandemic, that is not possible. So it will have to be all on Zoom, at least to begin with.
Right.
But I think it will be very beneficial and get a lot out of it. So.
Right. And that's the point, is when we're willing to listen, we're willing to learn. And, sometimes you may sit on that knowledge, and other times it may be, oh gosh, that's the missing link I've been looking for. Right. And so you have no idea where that inspiration is going to come. And that's the point. Be willing to listen, because there's a nugget out there that you're looking for that you didn't even know you were looking for until you've heard it.
Well, listening and speaking up, because that's the idea, is not that it goes one way.
No.
Everybody,
it's interaction.
Helping everybody else.
Yeah.
Nobody's got all the answers. But your podcasts, and you've been doing this for 10 years.
Almost 10 years now, yeah.
With all kinds of guests that are very inspiring and quite eclectic.
Yes.
Yeah, I encourage people to listen to you.
Thank you. No, I mean, this is, as I said, I definitely found my niche later in life. 57, I stumbled into it. I had no idea what a podcast was, and when I was asked to join another network, and then 13 months later, I started my own. And it's truly been extraordinary, the wonderful wisdom, the inspiration, the illumination that I've learned along the way, and that others have learned. So, I call it the orchard of wisdom ready for clicking. And it's right there, whatever the topic is, whatever people need to know, it's right there. And if we're just willing to just listen, and I encourage people to have podcast parties, everybody listen to the podcast and then come together and have a conversation about it.
Oh, great idea.
Because now people can actually, I got this out of it, I got that out of it. Oh, I didn't hear that bit. That's a good bit. Again, collaboration. Everybody come together. We gain so much more when we're willing to share each and our enthusiasm, our perspective, what we got from it, because now everybody gets something out of it different to even what they got out of it. So,
well, I give a challenge when I appear on podcasts as guests, and I love being a podcast guest. So thank you for
my pleasure.
Inviting me. The challenge is, think of 3 people that you work with in some way. Doesn't have to be in the same company if you all have an employer, but that's maybe the number one choice, I would say, but people, especially these days, are not necessarily in that situation. And reach out to them, somebody that you don't really know very well as a person, and reach out and say, let's have a conversation. And 3 people, I'm saying, and just try it out and see what you get out of it. And let me know how it goes.
Yeah, I've had 2 this last week. So yes, and you just don't know. You don't know what the connection's going to be. You don't know how you can help each other or inspire each other unless you reach out, right?
Yeah. And these 3 people optimally will be of different generations than yours. So
yeah,
make it
bridge that gap.
Older, young, whatever. But just because you'll get more different perspectives than if it's somebody who's more of a peer in age with you.
Yeah, and especially too if it's somebody in a different type of career thing to you, right? Because there's always common denominators, even if we're doing something different. So.
But even if it's somebody that works for the same company as you do, or whatever the organization is, but it isn't someone that you know really well, or you have gone through how can we best collaborate,
right?
So try 3, and then when you finish with the 3, and keep up those relationships. One conversation, because these things need to go deeper. And you really have to use your curiosity. That's one of the 10 essential skills, and you can't Google it. I'm always feel I'm infinitely curious. But you cannot be a good networker or reciprocity. You can't be a good business developer if you're not curious.
And I agree with you. With the social media, so many people just post, they don't invite and they don't participate. And I take at least an hour a day where I go into the social medias and respond and participate. And, you might not be able to do an hour a day, but, if you can take an hour a week and just get in there and join in the conversation, engage in somebody, right?
That's what I do. That's how you get to know people.
Yes, that is a form of networking nowadays. Yeah.
Yeah. But it makes it interesting.
Yes.
You learn because you're reading what somebody posts, but then you say something and then they say something back and other people join in. And it's fun.
And it's like this week, I have got 9 shows going up, and the diversity of these shows are across the board, literally across the board. But that's what makes it interesting, because fundamentally, we're asking people to share their observation, their perspective, their skills, their wisdom from their point of view. And if we take the time to listen to other people's points of view, we get a clearer picture from, across the spectrum of everyone's lives. So yes, be curious. Life is about wonderment and exploration. Please do not sit and rest on your laurels. That's death-defying, really. Just it's a killer, totally. So, but thank you so much for sharing here today, Phyllis. It's been wonderful. Lots of wonderful wisdom being shared here.
My pleasure. Thank you for inviting me. I've enjoyed it tremendously.
And folks, please look at the generations not as a segregation. We were once young. We wanted to be heard, we wanted to be seen. And now as an elder, don't put us out to pasture. We've still got a lot to contribute. And if you put everybody around the table and everybody starts talking, listening and participating, you'll be surprised of how beneficial it is to absolutely everybody. So until next time, folks, bye for now. We hope that you enjoyed the show right here on selfdiscoverymedia.com. Please tune in to our selfdiscoverymedia.com/shows and you will see all the other genres that we have from you. Every week on Tuesday, we bring you new shows from illuminating people. If you know someone that should be interviewed, please contact us at info@selfdiscoverymedia.com. Now stay tuned for your next show.